There was an incident in 2015 where I was exposed to polluted water during a race in Boracay in the Philippines. I was in the hospital. My immune system crashed. My hair turned white overnight, and I started to develop skin issues like vitiligo, where I started to turn white.
You're a pollution survivor, and I've really come across that because, as you said, we don't want to accept that that's something that could happen.
How much more I can explain the link between ocean health and human health. My reply to people who have these opinions that are not based on fact or actual experience, all they need to do is just spend 1 to 2 hours with me, right? And like go out and see what the real issues are. And then they'll develop a sense of perspective.
That the knowledge exists, the awareness exists, the technology exists, the solutions exist. What is missing?
People who just want to raise awareness about the oceans or climate change. Yeah, I think the whole world is well aware. We need to move towards action.
Mathilda De Silva, founder of Ocean Purpose Project, a TV producer, a singer. You did dragon boat racing as well? Is that something
right.
You still do?
No, not now. Nah.
Not anymore?
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. And I know there's so many other things that you do that I'm probably missing that I'd love for you to touch upon. But welcome to Sustainability with Shreya. Thank you for being here with me today, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Shreya.
The Singapore Idol bit, were you what capacity were you part of that? Like, was it just more?
I was number 6 out of 5,000 people.
You were number 6 out of 5,000 people.
Yes, that's right. So you have week to week you go.
Yeah.
And then you get So I was number 6.
What is that like? What was that experience?
Is really, really quite crazy. You don't really kind of realize what you are in for until you join it. There's like thousands of people standing in a line. And frankly, I wasn't going to do it. I already had a job as a broadcast journalist in Australia. And my cousins were like, you got to do it. You got to try. Like, just give it a go. And so I stood in line for 14 hours. And I had literally just arrived back to Singapore from Australia after living there for 5 years. And 14 hours, getting accustomed to all of the heat, the humidity, and and literally having to stand with thousands of people to audition. That was really crazy. And it was a whirlwind experience. It was the plug into everything media, and every single media outlet, every single magazine, every single musician, band, hotel wanted to was part of Singapore Idol. And we lived apart from everybody for 6-7 months. We were not allowed to kind of use our phones. We were just, it's all about music and singing and performing, and everybody in Singapore knows who you are, what your name is, how badly you looked in a dress that you wore, dissecting every song that you did, every look that you had on TV.
Yeah.
So that was an experience, definitely.
How did you go from being into the space of music to sustainability and saving the oceans? And is there a connection between music and the work that you do as well?
How much time have you got? This is a very long story about my life. So I started off with Singapore Idol, and then I moved to become a current affairs news journalist. So I was producing, documentaries for the national broadcaster Channel News Asia, and then I was also, as if there weren't enough hours in a day, I also was a DJ for 2 radio stations, Symphony 92.4 and 938 Live. And then from there, after spending about a decade in very traditional broadcast journalism, I moved to become the head of communities for MediaCorp. What that meant was I was in charge of 700 social media pages and social media profiles for brands, for actors, actresses, radio DJs, and everything else in between. And so, my life kind of moved into social media and analytics. And on top of that, I was also paddling competitively for Singapore. Not one of the best ones, probably maybe a bit B grade, C grade.
I doubt that.
You can talk to the coach. I wasn't fantastic, but I was pretty fit. I could cycle about 35 kilometers to work. and cycle back home, paddle maybe about 20 kilometers a day. Not too bad. I mean, not fantastic like the rest of like my other super sporty friends, but there was an incident in 2015 where I was exposed to polluted water during a race in Boracay in the Philippines. And I didn't realize it at the time, but me and 120 of Team Singapore athletes, part of a team called Singapore Barbarians, we were paddling, we were swimming, we were diving, we were having the time of our lives, drinking, partying. It was fantastic. And it was just over a weekend. And when I landed back in Singapore, I was in the hospital and I didn't understand what had happened to me. My immune system crashed. I couldn't keep anything in. Everything was just coming out. And after a month following that, my hair turned white overnight. And I started to develop skin issues like vitiligo, where I started to turn white. So that's also why it takes a little bit of time for me to get ready for an interview, because like, I kind of have to, it takes a while for me to put my makeup. And so this is where I was like, okay, what is going on with me? And I thought like, maybe I was just sick. Maybe I was just tired. I mean, I worked as a TV producer, which is a very high stress job. Maybe that was what was causing it. And 3 years later, a friend of mine sent me an article and said that, did you realize that that beach that you always go to and you do this race in the Philippines, they're actually going to close this island for 6 to 7 months because they discovered that there have been gross environmental infringements happening. Yeah. They've been pumping raw sewage into the sea. All sorts of plastic waste, trash, chemicals, everything is just going in untreated into touristic beaches. And this is again where I was like, is that actually what made me sick? And after digging back over the years, every year that I had come back from Boracay, I mean, everybody has a bit of sniffles, maybe we're in the heat too much, we just assumed, okay, it's a hangover or something, right? But that year in 2015 was really, really bad. And, out of 120 people who paddled in Dragon Boat, only 20 of them still paddle today. Everybody else got some form of skin issue or digestive issue. And this is again where for the longest time, I didn't want to accept that me being exposed to polluted oceans is what made me sick. But, the evidence was just getting more and more clear to me that this is what actually caused my immune system to crash, and thereby then opening me up to 4 autoimmune conditions.
Oh my God.
So this is again where I hate this word victim, but I acutely understand what it is to be a victim of ocean pollution. That's because I live with it on a daily basis.
I have never looked at it from that lens. You're a pollution survivor. And I've really come across that because, as you said, we don't want to accept that that's something that could happen. And what was that disconnect for you? Why did you not want to maybe accept what you were reading and what you were hearing? Why did you not want to accept that this was what it was?
I think you have this idea that people who are affected by ocean pollution, on the cover of National Geographic magazine, they come from maybe living in a village next to a pollutive industry or something. You never realize that it could actually be you. And I think this is also something that I've realized that in my journey to move and pivot away from broadcasting and content production and social media into something that is so new. One of the key things that I've always struggled with is, people who kind of go like, hey, you're a content producer, you're a radio DJ, what do you know about marine biology or about, engineering or chemistry or other forms of ocean conservation? That's not your background, you're not a scientist. But I think one thing that I do bring to the table is that I represent close to 2 million people who live on polluted coastlines around the world. Many of them who don't have maybe a voice or a connection to be able to tell the story that we do. I acutely understand what it means to be affected by ocean pollution. I can literally tell you a story from just 2 weeks ago. Me and my staff, we've been really struggling. The beach that our officers are operating on, it's called Pasir Ris in the north of Singapore, is affected by a terrible bacterial bloom. We are not sure how come, but there is a massive outbreak of Enterococcus bacteria in that beach. And the National Environment Agency has actually put up signs and warned people that they can't swim. But of course, we have 60 fish farms in this town. What happens to them? And this is again where, for many years we have been asking for our solutions with seaweed and mussel lines to be implemented there. But, people are like, oh, you guys, your CEO is a content producer. We're not so sure. Nobody's done this in Singapore. How does it work? Why? If this was really a solution, then maybe government would have done it by now. And literally, we're in a situation where I was doing a beach cleanup about 2 weeks ago to kind of illustrate what the issues were with a potential investor in seaweed and also a Malaysian NGO. And some of that seawater splashed into my eye. And, 2 days later, I was actually at a massive maritime conference, networking. And my contact lenses were getting a bit scratchy, and suddenly I started to see flashes of white. I had an immense pain in my eyes, and I actually went blind for 2 days. So this is again where I don't know how clearer or how much more I can explain the link between ocean health and human health, mainly because I'm acutely feeling this pain myself. And so this is also where a conversation like this, a way to articulate how, as an individual, I'm acutely feeling what it means to have bacterial outbreak affect my own individual health. To be honest, I don't think a lot of people have kind of it's a very strange experience to be blinded for 2 days. I don't wish it on anybody. Plus also to experience the excruciating pain that comes with that form of health issue. But this is again where it's very difficult to explain to people who feel that, who talk about ocean conservation as something trendy, something cool, something to put on a t-shirt, something to carry maybe like a backpack around, or to post on TikTok and make it cool dance. I feel a disconnect with that because we are talking about millions of people who work as small holdings fish farmers who are struggling because of ocean pollution, not just the plastic that we see, but whole forms of other chemical pollution. We're seeing people who live in these coastal environments, people from, so I'm Malayali, and I come from a heritage of fishermen. So my grandfather and his grandfather before him, and we're all fishermen. So, to acutely see how this affects people in these coastal environments, that are actually feeding the world, this is again where, I think there's a massive disconnect between, what we are extracting out of the oceans for food, for energy, for even raw materials, and, how we're treating it, and also how we're treating the people who depend on it. And this is also where I felt I wanted to start something. I wanted to start a movement, and I wanted to start something that was centered on purpose. Something that was not, just a beach cleanup and oh, wow, we've done so much, beach cleanup. Something that was really beyond all of this trending, cool stuff that I'm so used to doing as a social media producer and as a content producer. Something that was also not just about raising awareness. I have a real issue with people who just want to raise awareness about the oceans or climate change. Yeah, I think the whole world is well aware. We need to move towards action. And that's really where Ocean Purpose Project began. There was a movement towards action and saying, we've done enough talking about it. As a child, I read about polluted oceans, and I'm 40 now. So it's 40 years. Yeah. We're aware. We need to do a lot more than just being aware. We also need to do a lot more than just creating a startup, trying to get VC money in, and then crashing and burning after 2 years, and then trying to flip ideas that are just high tech, focused on cool new fads. We really need to be consultative and to understand what the issues are on ground. And as a person who deals with ocean pollution on a daily basis, I am reminded almost every second of every day what happens when we don't dedicate time towards action and we just dedicate time towards awareness. I look at it, I feel it on a daily basis. So that's the journey of how I actually manage, how I've gotten here so far.
That's so powerful. Wow. Please tell me more about Ocean Purpose Project and what it's about and what it does.
So Ocean Purpose Project, we're a social enterprise. We are proudly based, our headquarters are on the beaches of Pasir Ris in the north of Singapore. Our offices are actually built out of recycled F1 materials. We even conduct very unique OPPs, or Ocean Purpose Projects. So we've got 3 pillars for now, but we're looking to expand them. The core purpose of Ocean Purpose Project is to turn ocean pollution into solutions. Really what that means is that we are trying to engage as many stakeholders and bring as many people to a project or an OPP to be able to hack things, look at problems through different lenses and perspectives, and really move towards solutions quickly that can scale. Yeah. So, for example, one of the solutions that we work on is plastic to hydrogen, creating mobile plastic to hydrogen units that are able to sit next to a landfill. They can be parked on a remote island. You could put them even in a high-class beach resort. Basically, it's just converting all of that ocean plastics, converting that into hydrogen, which is a form of clean energy. You burn hydrogen, you get energy and water. So that's one of the pillars. The second pillar is around, the first pillar is about plastics. The second pillar is about what happened to me, which is chemical exposure to chemical and bacterial pollution.
That's harder to see, I imagine. That's not as visible.
Yeah, that's like
plastic pollution.
Sometimes naked to the naked eye, you can't actually catch that. Also, how do you filter seas, right?
Exactly.
You're gonna spend a lot of money trying to and a lot of money on energy cost and all of this stuff, and labor trying to build a machine. I've actually done the numbers. It's about a 10 to 20 million Singapore dollar machine that will only last, that cannot work 365 days a year. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of energy to run something like that. And that's where we work with traditional farmers, with indigenous farmers, to grow native species of seaweed and mussels, to act as curtains. So we have a farm, a floating fish farm that we work with, where we've already secured the periphery of this farm with our seaweed and mussel lines. We're the first to do such a project in bioremediation in Singapore.
What do they do? What does the seaweed and the mussel?
So they're like kind of like a filter, like a curtain, and it's just absorbing excess carbon, nitrogen, nitrates, phosphates, excess ingredients that cause algae bloom. Of course, it's also absorbing the waste from the fish that are growing in the nets. And these seaweed and mussel lines, they work, I call them my best employees. 24 hours a day they work, sun and rain they work, 365 days a week, a year they work. And they're just absorbing all of that excess chemical and biological material at sea.
I see why they're your best employees.
Yeah, but we can actually turn those into alternative materials. For example, we can turn that into bioproducts such as biofertilizers, biostimulants, biocompost. We can even we've already proven this, we've turned a section of those materials and we've partnered with a fantastic Indonesian NGO to do this, where we've created bioplastics, 100% biodegradable bioplastics out of these seaweed and mussels.
Wow.
And this is again where, when we talk about change, when we talk about sustainability, it's about, to a farmer, to a fish farmer, you can't tell him, okay, I'm only here to do beach cleanup. And he's like, look, what's washing up in my farm is plastic and chemical and oil spill and everything, right? And it's not coming neatly, right? Plastic this side, so I can quickly go and help you achieve your aim as an NGO. It's all coming at once as an ecosystem of problems.
And it keeps coming back.
And it keeps coming. And it's coming on a daily basis. So, farmers, and rightly so, they ask me, like, how are you here to help us? Because we have to send our catch to market, and our fish are dying, let alone the wild populations of fish and ecosystem that's dying.
And that's also because of the plastic pollution and the chemical
Everything
pollutants
comes together. So this is again where, communities are asking us, look, and we already have cleaners who clean the beaches from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. How are you and your fancy NGO and your TikTok branding, with your 1 hour beach cleanup, how are you really helping us? Okay, you want us to maybe go off and go to a landfill and get our kids to go and pick up trash so you can turn it into earrings and coaster and furniture. But how is that also helping us to have jobs and energy and clean water and food and to support our families? And that's again where, at Ocean Purpose Project, we're trying to figure out how do we bring all of these needs from polluted communities, from polluted ecosystems, right?
Yeah.
Fish and other forms of wildlife don't have a spokesperson, so how do we also represent them and figure out, projects that are able to hack specific issues, but also have to provide an ecosystem of solutions. So that's again where those seaweed and mussel lines have actually been fantastic.
Was that from the traditional knowledge? Was that...
Exactly. So it took us about 2 years before a farmer actually said, okay, you come on our farm and we'll talk to you. It took 2 years of observation, of speaking to Indigenous people in this town as well as Indigenous people in this region to understand, how native species can perform bioremediation. It took a lot of time, and the number of times I've been scolded by farmers, right? Who are you? What are you trying to do? You're trying to put me into trouble. Are you spying on something? And to really kind of to earn their trust and for them to finally say okay, she's not here to make herself look like some eco angel or something. She genuinely cares about us. She wants to help. And it takes a lot of time and effort to do that and to be in field and to be out on floating farms.
Why do they have trust issues? If you don't mind me asking that, what are they afraid of when it comes to human trust?
There's a lot of, all polluted communities, coastal communities, have been ringing the alarm bells for the longest time. And it's fallen on deaf ears. You have fish farmers who have been saying, look, the water temperature is increasing. That's affecting our catch. There are multiple other things than ocean plastics and microplastics that are affecting our fish. How do you expect us to continue, feeding an ever increasing and hungry world when all of these factors are also increasing? You've had polluted communities saying for the longest time, our Indigenous knowledge, we understand, maybe not in academic terms or scientific terms, but we understand the relationship between humans, again, human health and ocean health and ecosystems. We've been talking about it for centuries. Why is nobody listening? And this is also where our role is to really say how do we pull many different forms of knowledge bases and intelligence and bring that together and say, let's turn this into an OPP or an Ocean Purpose Project. Let's figure out what's holding things up, right? What's holding some of the innovation up, even the deep tech, what's kind of preventing things like plastic to hydrogen from becoming an immediate solution? What's also getting farmers, to come on board and say okay, we'll trust this process as opposed to the many other people who have come telling us that they're going to solve our problems, but for whatever reasons, right, they haven't delivered. So this is again where we're looking at bringing I'm looking at bringing a lot of the things that worked well, in the social media world, analytics, iterative ways of working, Scrum, Agile. I bring a lot of these things that I not only have done in my previous career, but I'm a coach in these things. So I bring that to each OPP project. But I think you asked me a question about the relationship between music and sustainability.
Yeah.
If you ask any musician what's something that really drives them crazy, right, and like makes them irritated, the fundamental thing is every musician will tell you is that they hate when nobody is listening. So if you're in a band, like a jazz band, right, jazz musicians, you're gonna always tell if the band is like clicking in, even though they've never met each other, maybe they don't even speak the same like language. You know if this band is like amazing or these musicians are amazing based off how well they listen to each other. How well, like, they're also interpreting based, of course, they're reading music, their notes and all of that. They have a knowledge of standards. They're interpreting each other's behavior and also the level of musicality or even the notes and the tones that are coming at them. Yeah. And then they're building off each other and they are communicating real-time, split second, in a way that as an audience, most people don't actually realize all of this is going on. They're just like, yeah, this band is really cool. This is fun. Wow, they're having such a great time. But if you take that and you add this to sustainability, this is like a way of thinking and a framework of working that is sorely needed in sustainability. There are so many people that are working in sustainability that are in silos. You have academics who are chasing citations, who are like, no, I don't want to share with this other academic from another university because then they will publish earlier than I do.
Yeah.
So
competition.
You have industry. So for example, we do a lot with the hydrogen industry. And I can see so many players literally like sitting there attending each other's lectures and going like, okay, we're not going to share with them what we're doing. We're just going to use that for our own IP and our own projects. You have startups fighting against each other for funding, NGOs, everybody, right? Yeah. You have everybody also copying each other. It's like, you did beach cleanup here. I'm also going to do beach cleanup. Mm-hmm. You got a t-shirt? I got a t-shirt. You got a canvas tote bag? I also got a canvas tote bag. Let's escalate this, right? And it's ridiculous to me because if musicians in a jazz band behave that way, nobody could sit and listen to what they're playing. You're just going to have everybody trying to solo and outdo each other. So again, you might even have some of the most talented musicians in the world. Everybody knows their place when they are working together on stage. And that's exactly what we need in sustainability. We need people to understand the why. Unlike every other industry in the world, sustainability is about making sure that we are able to preserve that world. So why are we still behaving in this way where we're literally trying to... It's so much of dog eat dog. It's so much of copying each other. It's so much of infringement of IP. We could do 10 podcasts on how I've seen IP infringement happening in just the seaweed industry. This is again where what we are trying to do or we're trying to push and promote is for people to really understand that collaborative model, to put their ego aside and really say what is at stake. I'll give you an example. Our office is on the beach in Pasir Ris. What's at stake for us is very clear every time we come to work. For example, one of my staff about 2 weeks ago, he came to work and he was like, Miss Mathilda, I think one of the farms that used to be there, it's not there anymore. And I was like, sorry, what? Oh my God. Yeah. It's just a floating, that means last week we saw it there and then within a week it's gone.
What happened to it?
I think they just gave up. It's it's too much. Year after year of algae bloom and then this bacterial bloom. How much more can a poor farmer, or one who's actually blind in one eye because he's got terrible diabetes, how much more can they take, right? They are elderly as well. So they're like, okay, I just give up this farm. I think, nobody knows who we are anyway, right? As farmers, we are just invisible people who, get all of this fish and vegetables and whatever to the market. And then, of course, we don't have names. A lot of them don't have names. A lot of them are just like, these invisible people to the rest of us who are consuming at a massive rate. And that's also where, we see it on a daily basis. And we actually see playing out right in front of our eyes, what happens when the world doesn't collaborate, when innovative ways of working together, whether it's really, really innovative tech solutions, are just literally gathering dust in the back of a lab somewhere, because that particular researcher is maybe not so fluent at being able to sell his or herself. We've seen with our own two eyes farmers struggling. We've seen also a community that is maybe focused on everybody trying to look good in front of maybe a minister or trying to outshine stuff. Not really focused on what's actually happening in front of them. And this is again where, what we have been trying to push as a clarion call at Ocean Purpose Project is the only way forward is if all stakeholders come together and share information, collaborate, and also understand what's the end goal. The job to be done is really, for example, let's say with bioremediation or seaweed and mussels, it's to safeguard and preserve the 60 farms in my town. Because if they fail, that's the failure of the domestic seafood market for my country. So this is again where, our role is about saying, yes, we are trying to solve ocean pollution. We're trying to we're trying to find solutions. But everything that we do is not just your typical ocean conservation NGO. We are protecting economic objectives of the country. We're protecting key economic levers, for example, blue economy.
What is that?
So blue economy is really, it's an offshoot from ocean economy, which means all economic activities that's generated from the sea. Traditionally, it's been shipping industry, energy,
Fishing.
Fishing. Yeah. So that's what made up the ocean economy. The blue economy is a couple of steps above that, which means how do we maintain these economic activities in a sustainable way that's financially sustainable, ecologically sustainable. Exactly. So how do we do that? And this is again where the problem with the blue economy so far is that it's been very extractive. We've been overfishing, we've been extracting, you have your deep sea mining minerals, we've been extracting energy, we've been just extracting everything, sucking everything out of the ocean. Which is really weird because, the ocean is responsible for $3 to $6 trillion in global economic wealth, right?
$6 trillion.
$3 to $6 trillion, right? So, the number of people it employs, right? The intangible value of it, right? This is again where what we are trying to do is to really link and get people in our country and many other countries to see the link between these things. To get people to also realize that something far more impactful than what we went through with COVID is on its horizon because of the oceans. And, we haven't really quite seen that galvanizing of effort of people really coming forward.
What do you mean by that? Something more impactful than COVID is on the horizon because of the oceans?
So I'll give you an example just of today. 3 days ago, Singapore experienced the highest UV that we've ever had. The level of the heat. I mean, maybe you've journeyed to different countries, right? Like I think a friend of mine from Kuwait was like, "You think this is bad? We have 45 degrees."
That's also competition.
Exactly. So I'm like, yeah, but 37 degrees logged in Singapore last year, that's a new level. What happens when you have such extreme heat? What does that do to the surface of our oceans? Right, the link between heat, changing climates, and then how those overall climates are then affecting like individual weather patterns. These things, what leads to massive, high impact coastal storms and the rest, right? There's so much more that goes into it. Again, I'm not a scientist, but I speak to a lot of people who are. And I recall actually sitting in I think this was last year, I was in a panel discussion, and I had one of these very famous directors of an academic research institute sitting to the right of me. And, they had fans everywhere. We were in somebody's house. It was a lawyer's house. So we were sitting there, and then there was a lawyer on the right, on the left of me, and then he was on the right of me. And it was really hot. We were just like sweating, right? And I could tell that he was about to explode. And I was like, oh, Benjamin, what happened now? And he was like, if you think this is hot, next year in 2024, we are going to see heat that we've never seen in Singapore. And I was telling him, I was like, what about my staff who work, we paddle to fish farms. We paddle sometimes 2 to 5 kilometers to go to the farms that we go to. How are we going to conduct our work? And he was like, you can't. You just can't, because the heat that we are going to experience, you guys are not going to be able to take it. And I said, then what about the farmers that we work with? And he looked at me, right? And I think in that look kind of encapsulates all of the and he and his team, they've been doing so much of research on this area. It just tells us very clearly that if the scientists themselves are having difficulty to even send their own scientists out in field to research these various other issues of what's happening in our world, what more the rest of us who are just kind of floating and waiting. Okay, we'll deal with it when it happens, when there's sea level rise, then we'll get to it. When there's a heavy tropical storm, we'll get to it. When all the farmers close shop and we have no seafood, then we'll figure it out when we get there. The issue is that like you said, we can't kind of wait and kick the can down, right? Because it's already happening. People who are like, what happened to you, Mathilda, is just a one-off thing,
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody is ingesting polluted seawater and having this eye thing, it's unfortunate, but you are just a small number.
Is it a one-off case?
This is exactly also what I'm starting to find out, that there are so many other people. This is among my staff. Some of my staff are having some skin issues when they conduct their water quality tests. And this is again where my reply to people who have these opinions that are not based on fact or actual experience is to come and try it yourself. If you feel that these are topics that are not very important, shouldn't be top of mind, then come and paddle with me. I will sacrifice a bit of my health and do it again. I'll wear goggles, of course, this time. Come and paddle with me to the farm. Spend a day with me and understand what the issues are. If you haven't done that for a day or even 2 hours, I promise people will have a complete change of heart and really start to maybe invest, put in systems in place, or even appeal to their governments to make changes. All they need to do is just spend 1 to 2 hours with me, right? And go out and see what the real issues are. And then they'll develop a sense of perspective. We're so far removed from these topics, right? Because, whatever comes in a supermarket or in a market, it just arrives there, right? It's beautifully packaged.
Yeah. But it's not a one-off case, because even if the fish are ingesting this plastic, it is coming back to you in the form of bioaccumulation.
I mean, we're already seeing, I think they've already found microplastics on the Himalayas. They've already found that aerosol microplastics are being ingested by humans. I believe a friend of mine from Sabah sent me an article that claimed that they've scientists have been running tests between people who have ingested aerosol microplastics and those who have not, and found differences in terms of how their bodies behave. And so I think this is again where there is such a connection. I acutely feel this connection. I understand what the connection is. Having conversations like this is also about saying, this is not something that we can just kind of go, oh, if it's so bad, then what are we going to do? We just kind of
go with it.
It's like this. Which I have a real problem with. I have a real problem with people who are just apathetic and what it is, what it is. What are we gonna do? That's mainly also because they're not people who feel it acutely as I do. If you feel it, you genuinely go okay, how am I supposed to deal with this? And how do I also maybe find ways for us to improve the water conditions in my own town and in many other places around the world. And so this is again where when I speak at these UN ocean conferences, or when I try to speak to individual governments, I'm not coming at it from just an emotive element of, oh, I'm a victim, hear my story. That is not powerful, I feel. We've had many victims who have stepped up and spoken on global stages. Nobody cares or listens to them. If they did, we would be in a very different situation right now. The thing that I am pushing, though, is I am saying the solutions are already possible and available. The mindset, the knowledge base, the technology, the indigenous knowledge to be able to achieve solutions on various different problems are already here. The only thing that's missing is a collective will to really say okay, let's focus, 6 months, let's work on this particular project, let's fund it. Let's analyze the key issues, let's move it forward. I always say this to, some of my friends who, are kind of working as consultants in sustainability or reporting. I'm like, explain to me how this is possible. When I was a social media, head of communities for social media, I had 6 screens and dashboards where I could understand the behavior of a 19-year-old based off how they posted on their different social media platforms. How is it that this technology is already here where we can understand and even predict some of these forms of ocean pollution? How is it that these things are not readily available for us in sustainability now? Why do I need 3 years to create a sustainability report when, I can actually have a real-time reporting status of a 19-year-old, whether this person is more into Taylor Swift or Bruno Mars, and where exactly this person is experiencing these shifts in their musical taste. There's a big disconnect here, and I still don't understand why this disconnect exists. I think the sustainability industry actually needs to get organized fast. It also needs to quit waiting around for a government or a influencer to kind of tell them that this is the direction that they should go into. I think industry actually needs to get involved and start bringing various forms of industrial knowledge, systems, operations, technology to get things moving much faster.
You mean private companies, established businesses?
Exactly.
MNCs.
Unpopular thought. For example, the petrochemical industry is able to go off and measure efficiency of its operations to the nanosecond, right? How do we take these kinds of structures, the ways that they work, and use them to benefit the environment, as opposed to what they're doing, extraction, right, to harm. So this is again where everything that we're doing at Ocean Purpose Project is about looking at things from a different perspective. It's about saying how do we achieve point A to point B in the fastest way possible by really mobilizing the global brain trust around key topics. Instead of just saying, okay, let's research it more and see how it goes, and we'll get to it when we get to it. But we may not even have the time
Like you
to be
said,
able to do
the
that.
knowledge exists, the awareness exists, the technology exists, the solutions exist. What is missing? And
That's the $1 million question. Like, if I had an answer for that, right? Like, we would be able to move our own projects much faster.
But is it $1 million question? Literally, is it about the money?
I think money is one aspect. There's a lot of money that's being funded into silly projects. Like, I've actually like kind of seen like fancy decks and, get funded. And, everybody in the industry is like, who are these people again? Like, how did they manage to like, push such a project like, forward? Just yesterday, I was reading a LinkedIn post about a farm in Singapore that was going to be high tech, and it was aquaculture. And I think like it was a $65 million project that just went bust. And, it's one of those things where you have the rest of us who are actively working in this space. And you also have farmers, many of who I know in Singapore, who are also like, I could have done with at least like, like even 10%, right, of that money would have really helped me to be able to scale up existing projects that are already working. And so I think what's happening is that the people who are investing are, not hands-on. They're not, they have a disconnected knowledge. The people who are advising are also, again, not hands-on. The projects that are getting funded are the ones that, we're also not seeing very robust project reporting mechanisms come into place, right? Like, so for example, if you gave $65 million to a project, you'd want to know real time. How's it going, y'all? That's a lot of cash, man. Like,
What are you doing with that money?
you want to tell me, or you want to kind of like, let me know 2 years down the line, or like, or you going to give me like a dashboard where I can see all of this stuff. I kind of want to know at 1 a.m. I kind of want to know at like, at 9 a.m. when I have a board meeting. I'd want to know. And so this is also where I'm kind of like, why is it that everybody else is cool with let's just let him, figure it out 3 years, So this is also one of those things where there's a gap, and there are a lot of gaps there. There are struggles that are happening with whether it's with the startups who are struggling to move things forward. I would say that for everybody that's working in this space, to really you can't talk about sustainability of a planet if things are not financially sustainable. So, for example, I think there's so many NGOs and social enterprises like myself. We get approached by big companies who are like, we'd like to volunteer, but we want to do this, and we want it to be filmed in this way, and we want you guys to take like photos and videos of how we are volunteering and really helping you, but we only want to help in this way. And it's like, okay, you guys are companies that have a lot of money. This is what we need. Oh, no, we don't want to do that. That's going to take too much time, and it's, and transport and all of that. But we want to do this bit, and we want you guys to dedicate this time for us and to really blast it on your LinkedIn and make us look good. But we're not going to give you the money for it. And so this is also where, you have a lot of people even, offering some of the most creative solutions I've seen in sustainability that are just not also being paid a fair wage or even a fair price for their projects or their work. On the flip side, you've got like some superstars who are communicating their projects in like spectacular ways, who are getting like, crazy money, insane money, and then just kind of disappearing, after a while. There's a disconnect here. I'm really not sure, what's the common factors between this. That could be a PhD in itself. But what I do believe is the common factor that helps everybody to stay on track and understand issues more is really getting hands-on. I cannot stress this enough. If, for example, a VC that funds seaweed has not visited a seaweed farm, has not worked a day as a seaweed farmer, this is again what's going to cause the current state of affairs that we have.
The disconnect.
If you are, let's say, working in a government agency and your role is to maybe promote renewable energy, let's say floating solar on oceans, or your role is to promote fish farms, or the increasing aquacultural capacity and all of that. If you're not on site, and I don't mean like the 1 hour, 2 hour tour where everybody's wearing a nice polo t-shirt. I mean, take a day,
Get your hands dirty.
work alongside whoever is deploying these projects. Like you said, get your hands dirty. You're going to learn a lot more than, like any of these, fancy site visits or like any PowerPoint deck can tell you. It's also going to give you a very clear perspective in terms of what's missing and what help is actually required. If I had $1, right, for the number of startups who said, we don't want to be invested in, I just need my first customer. That's again where, because of me actually competing against all of these other startups and startup competitions, that's how I know that. And so this is again where, it's so important for the industry to actually get hands-on, to understand the issues, to touch it, to feel it, to understand what it means to actually work under the sun in extreme high UV with 150 SPF, and even then you're getting a terrible burn. Yeah. Some of my staff have scalp burns, right? And they're with a cap on. And this is again where, if you spend a day working with us, alongside us, with fish farmers, paddling out to sea, sampling, seaweed and mussels, being in a lab, and sometimes it can get really smelly, some of the work that we do in the lab, going out to vessels, to understand how hydrogen vessels work, just that one day. And I invite, all of your investment community and funding community, come and spend that one day with us, work alongside us, and then you'll understand why we are working to create these little projects, why we're trying to create ecosystems of solutions, why we are, why I refuse till today, even though my staff are saying, you really need to do it, I refuse to sell a t-shirt and merchandise just to, get people to understand why our work is important. The world doesn't need more waste, right? We really just need more people to be hands-on and take action, to go off and do. And that's really, I think, the message that we're trying to put out there, especially to young people who are like, oh, there's so much of stuff, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, or what can we do? What can we do as individuals?
Stop channeling the energy towards all of this, overwhelm. Why waste? Energy is electricity, right? Internally within your body. Why are you wasting all of that energy and electricity on all of this stuff? What are we going to do? Just stop and stop, the worry cycle and get involved. Do. By doing, you'll then understand, different aspects of, what's missing. They might even have a solution. They might even have an innovation or a contribution or a perspective that is able to move projects forward.
Where does one begin?
Honestly, it really depends on an individual. So let's say if you're a musician and you're like, I don't know anything about this stuff. Let's be honest, I didn't know anything about this stuff. We just read. There's so much of stuff that's available, right? There's so many podcasts like what you have. There's so much of information that's available. Go off and read and learn. If that's okay, too much, then literally reach out to who's in your community and say, can I what do you guys need help with today, right? So for example, anybody who reaches out and says if somebody goes, I'd like to volunteer, but can you write a report for me? Can you also take photo for me? I'd be like, no, ignore. If someone reaches out to us and say, how can we help you today? I only have maybe 5 hours. We're from a school. We'd really like to help. How can we help you today? That's who we literally say, okay, you've got the right frame of mind. Come and do this with us or whatever, right, for that day. And I think that's really where everybody needs to switch and go what can I do? Each individual is different. You don't need to be an Einstein. You're not Elon Musk. Elon Musk is Elon Musk. The rest of us are just everybody else, right? None of us are, maybe a lot of us are not going to go off and create a brand new electric vehicle, right? Sure, fine, that's cool. Maybe one of us is going to go off and make a t-shirt out of seaweed. One of us is going to cook something. One of us is going to talk about something, to sing about something, to draw something.
So bringing our passion and our skill and our superpower into the movement.
Exactly. Whatever it is that you do, whatever it is that you can do, give more of yourself to go off and do it. That's the core focus and the core call I have. If you don't take action and if you just kind of sit there and ruminate, or just worse, we're just going to scroll to TikTok, right? Doom scroll and go oh my God, it's too much. That energy doesn't serve anybody. That energy doesn't help anyone. And most of all, it's actually detrimental to individuals. It just leads everybody down this spiral of of despair.
If that it's too late, nothing can be done. It's bigger than us. What can we do about it?
Exactly. So, why waste time on this kind of stuff? This is also where I can literally attest to that, because there are some days where I'm not able to walk. Some days where I have difficulty standing up. I remember even at COP27, suddenly I developed a muscular spasm. Thank God it was a day after I actually did all my speaking engagements. And I slipped and I fell and I hit my head on on a rock. And luckily I was on the phone to our staff in Singapore. And she was so smart. She managed to call our staff in Egypt to you need to look for her. She's somewhere near the water's edge and all of this kind of stuff. So even in a situation like this, when I am physically not able to speak, to see, to move, even then I am firmly at peace, mainly because I know I've done my part. I've given the maximum of what I can possibly give as a human individual. I've given as much as I can possibly sacrifice. I've really sat and thought and tried. And so even in situations where, because of a polluted ocean, I myself am not able to do all of these things, I know very clearly that, I don't actually need to go into this cycle of despair because I've already done something. So I literally then go, okay, we're just going to rest. It's going to take me longer than somebody who's fit, healthy, smarter than me, or maybe with more connections or more funding. But I mean, it is what it is. I have whatever limited resources that I have to be able to add value to these projects and advance these projects. Instead of feeling that despair, I can just sleep or rest and then come at it again the next day. Hopefully my health will be a little bit better, and then I can go off and do more. So I think that's really the focus that we need to have in people. That's also where people who are victim of ocean pollution are actually saying, yeah, it's terrible, it's tough, it's really painful, but we are doing something. So what more everybody else, instead of being paralyzed by these emotions, really stay, okay, we're going to take active steps to move forward.
There are so many issues when it comes to ocean pollution. What is the root cause, and what is, according to you, the most important solution, and what can we do about it?
So I just took a drink of water, right? Very interesting to me, because every drop of water used to be in a massive ocean somewhere. Also used to be in probably another human being or another life form, or a plant, or in the soil, or in a glacier. This is again where understanding the relationship between all of us, that link, right? You hear all of these hippies go, we're all linked together, we're all part of this cosmic journey. Yeah, scientifically, there's actually something that links all of us together, and it's water. So vapor that I respire, right? That eventually ends up in a cloud that washes down somewhere, and then you drink it. The ocean is literally, and water is what links all of us on this planet. So I think understanding that link, that we're already linked by this, and then saying, how do we actually go off and work to find solutions, for example, like us, where we turn pollution into solutions. How do I actually also, give of myself to help others find these solutions, to break silos? I think that's really the key message that I'd like to leave with everyone. And of course, for people who are very interested in the work that we're doing at Ocean Purpose Project, go to our website, www.oceanpurposeproject.com. Learn more about what we do with plastic to hydrogen. Reach out to us if, even if you are from the energy industry or you're from plastics industry, talk to us, help us to figure out how we can actually be part of the solution. Help us to ideate things, help us to, look at some of the challenge points, journey with us, walk with us through this, get hands-on, get just do. And I think by doing, this is again where a lot of people are going to find their sense of purpose. And at the end, that's all this is, right? It's a purpose project, right? How do we find a sense of purpose in what we're doing? How do we, move things forward? So that's again where hopefully the work that we do is also a way for people to be able to say, okay, this is how we can get involved. This is how we can also improve our Earth.
Yeah. What does sustainability mean to you?
I don't like that word because I don't believe in sustainability. I believe in regeneration. That's something that I believe in. Sustainability means garbage in, garbage out, right? We're sustaining, right? We're not actually moving beyond. And this is also where what's very important for me is this word beyond. I'm a huge fan of it. How do we really move beyond, things that are ecologically sustainable should also be financially sustainable. So, this is also something that we need to already achieve that as a bare minimum and then think about how we can move beyond with regenerative economy.
Wow. Such a powerful story, Mathilda, and your work is so inspiring.
Thank you very much.
I know OPP is nominated for a short prize this year, and if Prince Williams is listening to this, this has to be a winner.
Thank you.
I wish you all the success in everything you're trying to achieve and to do for our oceans, ocean health and human health. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you so much, Rhea.